G'day mate, 40 here. I was going to do this on DLive, but the DLive mobile setup just takes a little bit too much effort. So I'm doing almost all my streaming on DLive these days. So it's dlive.tv/Luke Ford live streams. Anyway, I just had a quick thought about stolen valor. So I remember a few years ago in therapy, my therapist suggested to me that my political extremism was a cope for the passivity with which I lived my regular life. And I thought, yeah, there's something to that. Like in my regular life, I was passive. I was settling for working 20 to 30 hours a week as an assistant, and earning less than $20 an hour. Had over $50,000 in credit card debt. Didn't have a girlfriend, and wasn't making much progress. And yet, this was, I think, 2015 or 2016. I was all very enthused about these dissident political ideas. And I thought, yeah, there really is something to that. I think I'm incredibly passive in my real life, and yet, talking really tough about the political solutions that I'd like to see for our country. And so I think that's prevalent throughout the distant right sphere. All sorts of people who are incredibly passive in their regular life, and then they talk like a furor in their political fantasies. So take the case of Eli Klein, right? He would boast on all these live streams about how he was, blowing up Muslims in the Middle East, and he was this fighter, and he's leaving people's brains spattered on the walls. And turns out he never deployed to Iraq, and that these stories were all BS. Yeah, he was making up all these stories of stolen valor, but how was he conducting his real life? Well, he was the boyfriend who attached himself to Samantha, that girl who later denounced the alt-right and Identity Europa. And when he lost his job after being doxxed, she'd offered him like a place to, she offered him support, and then he wheedled his way into staying with her, and then he wheedled his way into them becoming a couple. And then he never wanted to hold a job. All he wanted to do was be a thought leader. He just wanted to get on live streams all day. And remember the alt-right corporation and the falling out between Richard Spencer and Greg Conte, that Richard was paying Greg to be his assistant, that what Greg really wanted to do was be a thought leader, right? He wanted to be a thought leader in the distant right. Everybody wants to be a thought leader. Everybody wants to be a chief and make live streams and podcasts. But in the real life, many people don't want to move ahead with their careers. Many people are passive, and I'm not an exception to this. Like, I've never earned over about $90,000 in a year. So ideally, what I should be doing right now is not doing this live stream. I should be devoting my talents to making a ton of money. And I see this as widespread throughout the distant right. So Eli Mosley, he's crashing with Samantha. He's not contributing to the rent. I take it he's not doing much around the house. He's just calling into various live streams and podcasts and being a thought leader instead of getting a job. And so what about all the people I've interacted with on these streams who are content to work for $11 an hour in the United States of America in 2020, right? They're content with some crappy low-end job because it makes no requirements. It has, it doesn't require any responsibility. Oh, anything new about Eli Klein? What's new with Eli Klein? So I just sense that most of the defendant in Unite the Right lawsuit facing more sanctions, right? So, do you think he is aggressively looking after his welfare in this lawsuit? Do you think he's aggressively defending himself? He was released from custody in January, and the release says court has not heard from him since that time. Like, do you think he's aggressively moving ahead with a career? Do you think he is aggressively pursuing job skills? Do you think he is aggressively getting his life together? Do you think he's aggressively pursuing the psychotherapy that he needs? Klein was jailed earlier this year, ordered to pay monetary sanctions after he was being held in civil contempt for not responding to orders, evidence in his possession. Yeah, so he's a mess. And somehow I just get the sense that he's not really making even normal adult decisions to move ahead with his life. Instead, he's being incredibly passive and childlike in reaction to his adult responsibilities. So he's fleeing adult responsibilities. He's claiming, all sorts of valor and tough deeds and tough guy behavior that he is not able to do in real life. So he's living in a fantasy world of this stolen valor, that he was, spilling people's brains all over walls as a soldier for the United States military in Iraq when there's no evidence he was ever in Iraq. Doesn't sound like he's making much progress in looking after his responsibilities with regard to this lawsuit, and I just doubt that he's moving ahead with a career, getting job skills, getting an education, getting his life together. So, and on the other hand, he's like 1488. So on the one hand, he's incredibly extreme in his politics, and yet in his real life, just passive and weak and wimpy and childlike. And then let's take the Millennial Woes character, and I'm talking here about the character on TV or the character on YouTube, right? I'm not talking as much about the man behind the character, just talking about the Millennial Woes as he presents himself to the world as a guy who's has no substantial work history, not making much of an attempt as he presents it to get a job, to develop skills, someone who lives in his father's basement and depends on welfare and people donating money to him and taking care of him. So it's incredibly, he presents it. I'm not talking so much about the real man, I'm talking about the character Millennial Woes. I don't want to beat up on a real man. Just saying that the character that he presents in his live streams is an incredibly passive, childlike, obese man in his 30s who's in bad shape physically, psychologically, doing nothing to get his life together. Sits around waiting for other people to send him money to make videos, which he's really done in 2020. Who, when he encounters any turbulence, it just knocks him back into further cycles of depression and passivity. So the character Millennial Woes, I don't know much about the real person, but the character Millennial Woes just seems incredibly passive, childlike, living in his dad's basement or living with supporters or, people who will bail him out of his own bad decisions. People who will take care of him because he's unwilling to take care of himself. And so with Eli Mosley, Eli Klein, Millennial Woes, this seems to be a trend that so many of the 1488 crowd online, all these thought leaders for the alt-right, they're living with their mothers. Richard Spencer living with his mother in this documentary, and unable to pay his bar tab, unable to pay all sorts of bills, unable to pay his lawyers, unable to take care of his child support issues with his divorce. Just this childlike passivity, inability to deal with the real world, inability just to meet normal adult responsibilities and challenges, but instead talking incredibly tough about how he'd like to remake society. So sort of like the rock star who can mesmerize a crowd. That's Richard Spencer, not so much Millennial Woes or Eli Mosley here, but Richard Spencer can mesmerize a crowd, but completely incapable of taking care of himself. So I knew this woman. She ran her own business. She was a leading pornographer, Holly Randall. And so she was very assertive about running her own business. But in the bedroom, she wanted to be completely dominated. Like she'd plead with me to F her like a whore. So most of her life, this was a strong take charge, assertive woman. But in the bedroom, she liked to be, the passive recipient of male rage. She'd tell me to take out all my rage against women on her in the bedroom. Now, I was the opposite. Like I was kind of passive in my life. I wasn't running any substantial business. And but in the bedroom, I wanted to be a hero. Like in the streets, I was a conventional dude. In the sheets, I was a grand dragon. And so, often in the bedroom, we like to, as a bedroom warrior, there are keyboard warriors and bedroom warriors. And I got to say, since about 1989, I've often been a bedroom warrior, incredibly passive in my real life decisions. But working out this heroic, warrior-like fantasy. Like here I am, this master coxman, just slicing and dicing. I take a no holds barred approach to the bedroom. Right, so we instead of taking like an aggressive approach to one's career, a lot of guys just take an aggressive approach to the bedroom. Instead of like moving up in one's career, developing one's job skills, increasing one's earnings, building a new business, being aggressive in the ways that men are traditionally expected to be aggressive, instead these guys are incredibly passive about their life direction, just like taking the absolutely easiest way out with their income, just earning enough, taking the easiest way out, like the smoothest, gentlest, easiest road to earn money. Just do the very bare minimum, like putting almost nothing into it, just kind of doing their jobs and their earning just by rote, just going through the motions in the workplace. But then in the politics, they're 1488. Like they want a revolution. They want an armed coup. Come on, isn't that hilarious? Guys are like almost everyone who wants like an armed coup, wants Donald Trump to be this massive authoritarian. Like they're passive as hell in their real life, right? They get cucked by their wives. They get probably bossed around by people in the real world. They can't be bothered to build anything in real life. They're not aggressive in developing their career. They're not building any new businesses. They're not developing new job skills. They're not looking to take on additional responsibilities. They're being as weak and childlike and going through the motions as possible. And then in politics, suddenly they're the Fuhrer. Suddenly they're like, 1488, we need an armed revolution. We need a strong man. Like, we need a strong man. What they're really saying is we need a strong man because I'm so weak and pathetic. Like, I'm all shriveled up. Like, I'm not stepping up to the plate for my own life. But, like, in America, we need a strong man. Meanwhile, let me just coast at my job. Yeah, warrior caste men aren't born to work, and they got a million excuses for why they shouldn't have to work. They got a million excuses for why they don't have to move ahead with their own real life responsibilities. Yeah, some fight, some work, some pray. Yeah, there's always an explanation why they need to be thought leaders, right? There's a good reason why they should be a thought leader and do live streams like me. I'm talking about myself here. I'm not some exception to this rule. This is not Luke on Mount Olympus, speaking down to lesser mortals. This is Luke, who should be making money right now, and instead he's doing a live stream musing about his thoughts. Yeah, it's all descendants of warriors with no outlet. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with me, bro. It's, I'm a warrior. I just have no outlet. Yeah. Maybe I didn't actually spill jihadi brains all over walls, but like deep inside, I'm a warrior. I just have no outlet because the damn US military didn't deploy me to the Middle East where I could have unleashed my inner warrior. Or I'm really a warrior, bro. That's why I spend 4 hours a day playing violent video games. It's like call of action, bro. Or what's that where you go around stealing cars? What are the violent video games that you youngsters play? It's like people, like they get, their proper aggression, which should be used to move ahead in life, to build something for your family, to play an important role in your community, to take a leadership role and to support causes that you believe are worthy, and to make something of yourself, like to listen to your heart. So what's the point of making more money when you have enough to be content? Call of Duty. What's GTA? What's that one where you drive around and you steal cars? Grand Theft Auto. Yeah, that's it. Okay, what's the point of making more money? Well, do you have any like special gifts? Do you have any special gifts that you want to give to what? Like what does your soul yearn for you to do? And to what extent is everything else a distraction? Yeah. Like you have a soul and your soul has certain yearnings. And how are you distracting yourself from your soul's yearnings? Are you playing video games? Are you spending time on live streams? Are you spending a lot of time on Twitter? Are you obsessed with politics? Like all these things to distract yourself from what it is that whatever your soul really wants you to do, which might be to start a business, or my soul yearns to be a warlord, putting my enemies to the sword. Like some people, they devote 10, 20 years to building a business, right? And business never makes money, but they put enormous time and resources into building up this dream business. They want to develop, a spirituality center, and maybe they develop these online courses, and they try to sell online courses. And like a normal 99.9% of people would have given up long ago. But 5, 10, 20 years down the road, they're still trying to build up their dream business. And you look at it from the outside, it's like, why are you putting so much effort into this for which you're getting no return? And the return is that they get to be frantically busy. I know someone fairly close to me who for 50 years is frantically busy. Frantic. And whenever I talk to her, she begins by saying, I'm just coming up for air. I'm just frantically busy. I'm flat out. Right? Yeah, let's say my Alexander Technique business. Let's say over the past 10 years, and let's say I put enormous resources of time, energy, and money into building up my Alexander Technique business, and it hasn't paid off. Well, on the face of it, it hasn't paid off. But what's really going on is that it's distracting me, right? If you're putting enormous resources of time, energy, and even money into projects that don't pay off, well, the payoff is actually that it distracts you from what your soul really wants. Like I know people, they're just always frantically busy. They're just coming up for air. They're just flat out. And why? They're not getting anywhere. They're not moving ahead. Their marriage isn't flourishing. Their businesses aren't thriving. They're not building up a nest egg for retirement. They have no tangible return for being flat out busy, except it distracts them from their unconscious pain. It keeps the pain unconscious. Distracts them from the pain of any challenges to their self-image or their self-conception. So thinking about people I know always frantically busy, they're all out on various projects, and there's no return. There's just no return. And so some of it Some of it is that they just get enough crumbs to keep going. We all yearn to slay your enemies. I don't think that's it. I think that's a cope. I think that's a distraction. What you yearn for is connection. What you yearn for is to listen to your soul and to live out what your soul yearns for. But instead, people just keep frantically busy with all sorts of projects and distractions and obsessions that don't pay off. And it avoids them from confronting themselves. It avoids them from the what's best in life, pointing out opinions that aren't peer reviewed. Look forward. I don't think there's any better feeling than winning a battle. Okay, but what about the battle with yourself, bro? How about winning the battle with yourself, with your own Yetzer Hara, your own self-destructive, selfish desires? Like, people could build up something with their church. They could volunteer with their church, and they could make a significant difference in a lot of lives. Right? That would be something significant. Like, you volunteer, you say, hey, we're not doing enough helping unemployed people in our church community. Like, we should have a weekly meeting for unemployed people. We should help them find jobs. We'll help them polish up their resumes. We'll help them with their work history to understand where they might have gone wrong. Or you could volunteer with your synagogue to deliver meals to shut-ins. Or you could volunteer with a neighborhood watch program, right? You want to be a warrior? Why not join or form a neighborhood watch program for your community? Or help people with opioid addiction. Or maybe what you really want to do is to build a video game, or build your own business, or paint watercolors, right? I just think that if you love working with kids, then that's what you should be doing. That's probably what your soul yearns for, is to work with kids, right? So this is just a tendency that I notice on large parts of the extreme right and the extreme left, is that people are incredibly passive in their daily life. They work at McDonald's or the equivalent. They file, they sweep floors, they wash dishes. They're content with their community college job. And then out on the streets, then they're Antifa, or they're Black Lives Matter, or they're dissident right. So in the streets, they're warriors. But in daily life, they're cucks. Daily life, they're passive. Daily life, they're not building anything. In daily life, they're not joining in any community. In daily life, they're not listening to their soul. But they're all wrapped up in being warriors in this radical experience. There's a feedback loop there. They feel alienated from the mainstream. They get into some kind of radical movement. They get fed. They get emotionally fed by being part of this radical movement. And they settle for this simulacra of a meaningful life. They get crumbs of meaning, crumbs of feeling significant from their radical political movement, and it distracts them from what their soul yearns for. Instead of facing up, just like a normal average adult, just being a worker among workers, just instead of meeting normal adult tasks, they get distracted by these delusions of being some grand warrior out in the street. So what role does culture play in that alienation? I don't know. I'm just noticing, thinking about the similarities between keyboard warriors and bedroom warriors, and warriors in the streets, and their incredible inability to step up in the real world. Why not? Most normal people, most normal guys, I know guys better, they express their aggression in building a business, in pursuing hobbies or a role in the community. They build things. And then when it comes to politics, they're fairly passive because they're tired. They're so tired from their hard work. They're so tired from their projects. They're so tired from building a business or pursuing a hobby or from volunteering, helping to look after other people who are less fortunate. Then when they come home, they're tired and they may read the newspaper or listen to talk radio or watch Fox News, but they do it passively because they've expelled all their energy pursuing things that they have some control over in their real life. Seems like most people in dissident politics on either the right or the left, they're passive in their real life, and they expend all their energy, their fantasy world, their conception of who they really are, this belief that I'm really a warrior. They play this game out either as a keyboard warrior or as a street protester or on 4chan. There's a division of labor: workers work, thinkers think, fighters fight, priests pray. Yeah, so the mind is incredible. It can always distract us from what our soul really wants. So we can come up with all sorts of reasons why we should be perfectly passive in our real life, why we shouldn't build anything significant with our real life. It's because I'm really meant to be a warrior. And so it's society's fault. It's the culture's fault that I can't be a warrior. And so I'm gonna cope by playing video games, or I'll be really extreme in the things that I write on my keyboard or that I say on a podcast. Thinking is for the glooby-runs. Pretty much what being a soldier is: days of routine and training, waiting for minutes of blood-curdling chaos. So just like I think we often build up this self-image, like I'm really a warrior, and our greatest fear is that I'm weak and passive with my real life. So instead of confronting our fear that we're weak and passive with our real life, we just distract ourselves through political extremism or sports extremism, instead of confronting our great fear that while we have this self-image that I'm a warrior, we have this great fear that we're weak. We might have this self-image, I'm a responsible person, and then we have these feelings that undermine that self-image, that's saying that I'm a cuck, I'm weak, I'm a loser, I'm just coasting, I'm not really using my abilities in an adult way. And so we try to ignore these uncomfortable feelings that come up that contradict our self-image. We may regard ourselves as an asset to our community. What we really fear is that we're a detriment. Luke coming to grips with avoidance of his life's mission to become a famous Seventh-day Adventist Australian preacher. Right. So our soul yearns for things, but we distract ourselves. We have this self-image of ourselves that I'm a good person, but we have all sorts of feelings that we know are not good, and so we want to deny them or distract ourselves from them. And so when these painful feelings come up that contradict our self-image, the brain then kicks in and it gives us physical problems to deal with to prevent these unconscious feelings of rage, helplessness, and unworthiness from coming up and becoming conscious. So instead we get back pain, or people used to get ulcers, or you get psoriasis, all sorts of physical ailments, because we can't confront painful feelings. We don't want to sit with feeling unworthy. We don't want to journal about why do we feel unworthy. We don't want to journal about why we feel like, instead of being an asset to the community, that we're a drag. We don't want to confront that we're not going after a particular vision, or building a particular business, or investing money, or stepping up in our community. So I've been very influenced by John Sonner. Someone recently made the observation Luke retreats into self-help topics when he feels uncertain about political issues. What do I think of that? Maybe it takes tremendous energy to do these streams. And so I just try to tap into whatever gives me energy. So I'm starting to feel inklings of a renewed energy flow from going on DLive. I feel like we can recapture the magic on DLive because it's has much less censorship. But where the energy goes, that's where I go on these streams, because they're very tiring and you're very exposed, and there's a huge downside to doing these streams. There's a fairly modest upside. So I go where the energy goes, where I think I might have something to contribute. So if I don't feel like I have anything to contribute on politics, I'm going to look for an angle where I think I might have something to contribute. And so if I can see a correlation between something I'm working with, say with my 12-step programs, and something that's going up culturally or socially or politically, I jump on it, because there I think I have something unique to add, and something that I have a little bit of enthusiasm and energy and inspiration to go after. And so I'm doing this John Sarno work of spending a few minutes every day meditating on what am I feeling? What did I feel today? Normally that'd be the last thing that'd be of interest to me, but I believe that sometimes these blocked unconscious feelings of unworthiness, rage, that they do manifest in painful physical symptoms. So I do think that all of us are angrier, more frightened, more vulnerable than we believe. And we want to block that off. Like the world around us is a more dangerous place than we think about. Because if we were cognizant of how dangerous the world is around us, it would have a strong, freezing effect on us. But we also probably don't want to face up to the extent of our anger and our fears and our vulnerabilities from interviewing thousands of people. I've been struck by how everyone has, fragility and vulnerable points and weaknesses. Like you see someone on TV and they seem so together. Then you go to their home and interview them, and you get senses of all these, vulnerable human dimensions to someone. So I was inspired to do this stream by thinking about that Millennial Woes 30-minute video that he released yesterday, 9 months after being accused of sexual assault. I do feel acutely aware of danger of the moment. Is that delusional? Well, it depends on the danger. If you think that the United States as we know it is going to end because Joe Biden is slated to become the next president, I think that's delusional. If there's been, say, a sudden upsurge in, grand theft auto, home break-ins, murder, rape, pillage in your community, then taking that into effect seems rational to me. But I think having very strong feelings about what's happening in national politics, if they persist day in, day out, I think that is a distraction. We use that to distract ourselves from gaping wounds in our own lives, because there's almost nothing we can do about national politics. It's out of our hands, but we prefer to obsess over things that we can do nothing about, because that distracts us from taking care of the things that we can act on in our real lives.